Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio. Friday after Thanksgiving. I hope you had a great one at the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Joined now kindly enough, by Zach Osterman, who is in Atlantis in the Bahamas, covering the Indiana Hoosiers down there. And Zach, I hope it's been a great trip outside of the gym for you, because I'm sure it has been a grueling one on the inside.
Yeah, obviously, Indiana's played pretty poorly down here. I don't think there's any way around that. I think they looked a little bit better against Gonzaga than they did against Louisville, but I think that was just kind of a matter of degrees in a lot of respects. I mean, Gonzaga still led that game by 18 at halftime. I think its largest lead was 23. I mean, there's been kind of the I guess the quantifiable, which is, Indiana's looked really poor, both offensively and defensively. I think Indiana has been exposed in the way it defends ball screen coverages. Mark Few said something yesterday that felt like a pretty honest admission that Gonzaga had just kind of didn't have a lot of respect for the way Indiana covers ball screens. And you could see that with just how many easy looks around the rim Gonzaga was landing. When you think about, I think it's 46 points in the paint, 36 in the first half. And then there's the inquantifiable, which I think probably falls more in the category of, what we saw against Louisville, which was just a team that looked, frankly, like it was, kind of rolling over a little bit. It just looked like it had lost kind of its pushback in a lot of ways. And yeah, I mean, that's, there's really no way around it. Indiana's given up 176 points in 80 minutes here, or 178 points, in 80 minutes. It's been pretty bad basketball.
Yeah, and you mentioned something about Gonzaga, but it was the same for Louisville. Louisville, a team who we knew was going to focus on the three-point shot, and they got up a ton of those. I see for the game, what did they end up? 27. But
I think they were 10 to 27.
Yeah, more importantly, though, they outscored Indiana in the paint like 48 to 28. I forget what the exact numbers were, but it was substantial.
And I mean that wasn't post offense, and it wasn't with Gonzaga either. It wasn't it wasn't a dominant post player going down low, posting up, and just scoring really, really well. It was Indiana getting beat off the dribble. Indiana getting, again, exposed in ball screen coverages and ball screen situations, and that leading to really basic, forced rotations, forced help that was just leaving either giving players, easy looks around the rim, or I think this was more in Gonzaga's case, but it happened in the Louisville game too, leaving players just completely unattended, basically, in layup position. Mike Woodson said after, I think it was the Gonzaga game, that he thought this team was in the place it needed to be going into this trip. He thought he had his defense kind of dialed in the way he wanted, and it's. He admitted this yesterday. It's kind of an obvious thing to say, but it's pretty clear that was not the case, because Indiana has just completely and totally collapsed defensively here. And to your point about paint points, like I said, it's not like Indiana was facing dominant post players. It's the paint points we're talking about are not post ups that lead to post moves that lead to good finishes. We're talking about layups and dunks and wide open looks for players who are just completely undefended around the rim. And that's got to be kind of the most fundamental piece of your defense, right? Like you just not giving up anything Not giving up anything easy around the rim has to be where it starts, and Indiana's just not been able to do that.
No, they haven't. Louisville finished with 4 players in double figures and 3 more with 8 points. So they were getting it from all around, where in that game, Indiana was only getting points from Malik Renew, Umar Ballo, and Mackenzie Mbako for the most point. Later on, that changed a little bit, but they didn't have a point from a guard or from anyone until like midway through the second half. And Rice ends up with 3, Carlisle with nothing. So, and Cups with nothing. Leo had 5 points. I'm not sure when those came, but they're getting, really nothing from the guard position. And that is not going to win you any games, not in this age of college basketball.
No, and again, that's where you do wonder a little bit more about the intangible side of a lot of this, and just whether kind of where Indiana's head is collectively as a team. I mean, I just think you've seen players that have just I don't like to use the word quit. I don't think most athletes quit. I think maybe there are times when you're, as somebody who played in my share of, lopsided defeats in high school when I played football, like there are probably times when you think you're trying hard and you're not. Like there's just something in your subconscious that is saying it's, the lead's too big, the game is gone. You think you're playing hard, but it's not at the level you would be if it was a tie game or whatever. I don't think these players have quit, but I do think you have seen, a disconnectedness in the way that coaches often talk about how players need to sort of get tighter together when things start to go wrong. They need to be more connected. They need to fight harder for one another. They need to communicate better. They need to, just kind of work that extra bit harder to make sure they're all rowing at the same time in the same direction. And I think you've seen, this team really lose its connectivity with itself, pretty much as soon as these games have really started to go wrong. And that's been particularly evident at the guard position, and it always will be, because guards, it's through your guards that your offense flows. I mean, like I thought in the Louisville game, Miles Rice was very clearly trying too hard. I don't think he was quitting. I think he was forcing the action too much. But you can tell when, in particular, a point guard is doing that, because a point guard's got the ball in his hands every possession, and when he's forcing, and when he's not letting the game sort of flow through him and come to him, comfortably or naturally, it's a lot more apparent than some other positions. And I'm not trying to pick on Miles Rice. Straight Galloway struggled out here. Cannon Carlisle struggled out here. Obviously, we could talk about other positions. We're just kind of centering on the guards right now. I don't think anybody's really free from blame, but it has just been that guard rotation in particular has kind of been representative of what this was supposed to look like, and decidedly hasn't.
Yeah, and they go into a game today with a Providence team who also lives and dies by the 3. I noticed that they hit around 32%, but that is on 33 point attempts per game, which that's getting a lot of shots up. And if you can get 32% off of those, you're going to be happy. Like Todd Leary was on with us early, so that's 10 a game. And so that is something Indiana is going to have to be ready and leery of, no pun intended, as they go forward today against the Friars.
Yeah, I don't think, it kind of goes without saying, I don't think Indiana is in a position to take anybody lightly. Now, I don't think Providence is necessarily, the best team on earth here, obviously. A couple battling defeats. They looked better in the Oklahoma loss than they did against Davidson. They didn't really have a good win, if anything. Like you look at kind of some of their wins, and they only beat Central Connecticut State by 4. They only beat Hampton by 9. They only beat Green Bay by 13. But nevertheless, if you're Indiana, like there's no sort of style of basketball. There's no team in this field that you can look at and not take seriously. And if you want to talk about things they do well, are things that are problems for Indiana. That, as you say, they aren't the best 3-point shooting team in the country, but they do take a lot of threes. They score a lot of their points on threes, and they're a very good rebounding team. And, teams that have been able to hit threes on Indiana and sort of lopside the offensive formula a little bit on Indiana have given Indiana a lot of trouble, because that's, Indiana's had to answer threes with twos or threes with free throws often. And Indiana has, frankly, this year in particular, but I think this has been a consistent problem throughout Mike Woodson's tenure. Indiana's really struggled to clear offensive rebounds, particularly the ones that come on three-pointers, particularly the ones that are, those longer caroms that you get on a three, as opposed to a shot around the rim, or let's say inside 10 feet, where the rebound tends to stay kind of within the circle, so to speak. When you those longer shots create longer caroms, and Indiana really struggles to clear those sort of 12 to 15 foot rebounds, and Providence is really good at a lot of those things. So I don't think Indiana can take this team lightly. I mean, I don't think they will, but again, we're talking about a team that's given up 89 points now, twice in as many games. It's hard to have a ton of faith in Indiana at this point.
Absolutely. First of all, how have the Bahamas been? At least, have you got to enjoy outside at all?
Yeah, no, the weather's been good. It's been obviously more mild here given the time of year, and it's cool in the sense that kind of everything's contained here in the resort, and so you see like a lot of fans, and I've seen a number of folks I know from other programs, like Nate Weechers, who was one of IU's SIDs for several years and is now Arizona's lead SID. Connected with Nate, saw Noah Vonleh was out here. I think his sister plays for Baylor, if I'm not mistaken. And then I saw a couple of India, obviously. IU fans will be familiar with Tom Ostrom and Corey Barnett. We're both on staff with Darian DeVries at West Virginia. So it's kind of fun, because you kind of, it's a little bit like if an NCAA tournament, an NCAA tournament site was housed all in one like big hotel complex with the arena there and everything. You just kind of run into everybody, and it's cool because it is. It sounds silly, but it's kind of a little bit of a festival of basketball. Like I'd never covered this event. I've been out here for Indiana's preseason tour, but they've never played in Atlantis proper. And it is just kind of cool to, you just run into a lot of people, and obviously getting to talk to a lot of IU fans. And of course, the last couple of days have been pretty frustrated, but I think everybody is still enjoying the spectacle, if you will. And I do think, it's worth saying, I think the folks that put this event on do a really, really good job, like just kind of keeping everything flowing and smooth. And, I haven't seen really problems with like crowd control or ticket take or, clearing the gym for one game to get it filled for the next one and that kind of stuff. It all moves along really smoothly. It's a really well-run event.
Now, have you been to events before where they're played in this ballroom type setting? I have not. I didn't make it down there this year, and I've not been in one of those settings, so I know that has to be unique. Is it louder because their sound has no place to go?
Yeah, a little bit. Obviously, we saw Indiana play out here in the preseason tour 3 years ago. And that was, of course, going to be a smaller crowd. And, I think there's a team from Serbia, BC Mega, that I think is the one that kind of comes over and plays those preseason tours pretty consistently every year. And of course, as you'd imagine, they don't really bring a ton of fans. So it's all kind of down to the team that's doing the preseason touring, so to speak. But with like 8 different fan bases represented, and obviously everybody here until the end, that's the other difference with an NCAA tournament environment, is you kind of wind up in a situation where eventually fans start leaving because their team loses. Everybody sticks around here. Everybody's kind of in for a penny with all these games. So the arena is cool. Like I said, the step is really cool. I've seen some ballrooms before. I guess if we're ranking it, this is as good of a ballroom setup as I've ever seen. It very much just feels like a neutral floor. It feels like an NCAA tournament floor, essentially. And like I said, it's just kind of cool that like everything and everyone involved here is all kind of contained in one place.
Yeah, very unique. Now, switching to football, Indiana taking on Purdue in the bucket game tomorrow. Will you make it back in time for that game?
I'm going to try to. We'll see. We'll see what the travel gods allow, especially on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But I'm going to try to.
Yeah, with Indiana having an unusual 7 p.m. Kickoff against Purdue, that affords a lot of people to actually make it back, which was a little surprising. So, but Indiana needing to just play their game, Zach. I don't think that they're in danger of being knocked out of the CFP poll, but I don't think that they should give any ammunition or opportunity to any committee members that may be on the fence with a lackluster performance.
Yeah, I mean that's I think pretty much all you can do if you're Indiana at this point. Is just go out there and basically be as impressive as you can be. I think obviously, I mean, Purdue is the worst team in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any way around that. On the other hand, this game has a history of throwing up, kind of unexpected results, as all rivalry games do, that derail seasons here and there. I think Indiana fans, if we're talking about maybe unpleasant memories for IU fans, we think back to that 1980 was in 1989. I think the Anthony Thompson, Heisman chase, and Anthony Thompson's teammates swear that if they'd beaten Purdue, he would have had a better shot at winning that Heisman. I don't know if that's true or not, but you talk to guys who played on that team, and they'll tell you. I mean, I've talked to Mark Hagan many times about that, and he'll swear up and down that if Indiana had found a way to win that game against Purdue, that Anthony Thompson would have had a better shot at the Heisman. So,
well, I agree because there's no one is only one guy has ever won the Heisman off of a team with a losing record, and that guy played. He played for Notre Dame, so that helped him a lot. So I believe that to be the truth, and it's sad, but I think that may be truthful.
And the point is, these games do have a habit of doing that, and I don't think Indiana's not going to be the only team. I mean, Alabama's hopes, whatever are left of them, are going to rely on not tripping up in the Iron Bowl against an Auburn team that suddenly has some offensive punch, and you've got Georgia's hosting Georgia Tech, which is a team that's already put a dent in Miami's resume and runs the ball pretty well. And, obviously Texas A&M is a play-in game for the SEC championship game. And if A&M loses it, then they're out of the running. Clemson and South Carolina is another big one. I don't think South Carolina can necessarily play its way onto the bubble with a win against Clemson, but I certainly think Clemson needs to beat South Carolina to stay on the bubble itself. So the point is, I mean, we can kind of go on and on with this, but from Indiana's perspective, the chance here is kind of to show that obviously you've kind of righted the ship after the Ohio State game, and B, frankly, to some extent, to kind of reinforce what it is that Indiana has been doing well this season, which is when Indiana plays inferior competition, Indiana looks a clear class above. And again, Purdue is, by any measure, the worst team in the Big Ten this season. And I'm not saying that out of some rivalry spite or to pick on Purdue. That's what the numbers tell you. Purdue is last in the Big Ten in scoring defense, last in the Big Ten in total defense. I think they are, if they're not last, they're third from last in total offense. Excuse me. They're in a similar position in scoring offense. So the point is they don't score, they don't move the ball. They don't stop opponents, and they don't stop opponents scoring the ball, and that's how you wind up 1-10. Somebody's asked me, a couple people have asked me if this is the widest I've ever seen the gap between the two programs. It probably is, and I don't know if there's a time historically when Purdue has been this much better than Indiana, but I think this is probably the widest in the modern era the gap has ever been in favor of Indiana between these two programs. And the point there is you just got to go out and look dominant again if you're Indiana, and that doesn't mean you need to chase a 50-point score or anything like that, because that's how you start making mistakes. You just kind of need to go out there and just execute drive by drive and just kind of let it pile up. And if Indiana does get into a situation where, let's say it's fairly in hand late third, early fourth quarter, I'm not sure Indiana stops trying to score, and that's again not a rivalry thing so much as it is, I think, Indiana trying to do whatever it can to goose its metrics and improve its resume. That's what everybody's got to do this time of year, and Indiana's no different.
Absolutely. They've said many times that those types of numbers matter, and you might as well get them while you can. So it should be a good weekend for Indiana, though. It's going to be chilly out there, and hopefully with the students are gone right now because of the holiday. I'm not sure how many will make it back and how many other fans will take their place. It will be interesting to see if this stadium is packed or not, because it's a night game and it's going to be cold as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's sold out, so I would be surprised if it's not close. It is going to be cold, but we'll see. I would be surprised if Indiana doesn't at least have a healthy crowd for this. We'll see if the weather and all that and the kick time dampen attendance a little bit. But I would be, given the season Indiana's had, I would be pretty surprised if this is not at or close to a sellout.
What time is the game today, Zach? I have forgot to look.
It's in about an hour. So when we get off, I'm going to shower and head over.
All right. Well, enjoy that, my friend. And we'll be looking for your content, as you should be, at the IndyStar. Zach is the IU insider for them. Be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. Zach, I appreciate you as always, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Zach. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.